not too long ago, the Backrooms movie released, and in my opinion, it was just absolute cinema, dude. Like, I haven't seen a scary movie that actually terrified me more than the way the Backrooms movie had, and usually horror movies do not scare me that much, because a lot of them tend to just be jump scare slop, or, ooh, so much gore and blood, how scary, boo, which unfortunately is where the state of the horror genre in films was for a while, until thankfully we had two wonderful gems, being the Backrooms movie and Obsession. Now, with the release of the Backrooms movie, I have seen a lot of interesting reception coming from viewers of the movie, and it really goes to show that some people just really aren't the brightest. So to help clear up some things about the movie that some people seem to not understand even after it's been out for a decent amount of time, we will be focusing on the one area I've seen the most confusion be present in within most of these people. And that area is the entities. Now, before explaining the entities, we first have to understand what type of Backrooms we're talking about here. I'm sure all of you know that the Backrooms movie is directed and primarily made by Kane Parsons. He is only 20 years old. With the Backrooms movie being directed by Kane, it means that the movie is tied and based on the YouTube series that Kane has been working on for a while. Now, if you were going into the Backrooms movie expecting stuff from the wiki, like levels and all those entities, or even stuff from like the Roblox games, you're stupid. There was very clear indications that showed that the wiki or Roblox or any other form of the Backrooms you may have seen are not going to be what the movie is based on. It's going to be based on the YouTube series that already exists and has been stated to be based on the YouTube series even within the trailers before the movie even came out. So you knew what to expect, and along with that, there's a lot of people that I've seen, especially fans of the wiki, who try to argue or still point out the fact that there's still levels in the movie. You can see this level at this part, and level 0 is here. Listen, just stop coping, bro. There are no levels in Kane Pixel's Backroom series. There is no such thing as levels. That is not a thing in the series, not in the videos, not in the movie. Just because some of the rooms in the movie or the series look like the levels doesn't make them the actual levels. Now, if you just want to cope and make yourself feel better, then I guess do what you want, but honestly, I would say just stop. You're just giving yourself false hope. If you like the wiki, then that's great for you, but honestly for me, I am not a fan of the wiki at all. I think it is just a jumbled mess. And it only pushes me further to prefer Kane Pixel's version of the Backrooms. Now, not only that, I have seen some very bright-minded individuals who have hopped on to this hate trend that was rising around the time the movie first came out, claiming it's a bad movie, it's trash because of this, and it's bad because of that. And honestly, that stuff was so dumb and very undeserved. Luckily, by the time of posting this video, a lot of that hate has died down, which is good. But man, it was really, really, really saddening to see so many people trashing on a movie based on their IQ level. The fact that some of these people can't fathom the idea of sitting still and watching a good movie, or not having enough brain power to comprehend something that's not really spoon-fed to you and you have to actually use your brain to understand something in a movie, is kind of just astounding that we've stooped this low. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's still a good movie. Even if you weren't a fan of it, I'm sure you could still say confidently that it was a pretty good film, whether it was for you or not. If you didn't like the Backrooms movie, then that's fine. But if your reasoning is because it wasn't like the Roblox game, you might actually think the moon is a satellite. Now, with that out the way, let's get into the main topic of this video. The entities. We love entities, right? Luckily, most people are able to comprehend this concept within Kane Pixel's Backrooms. But for the people that don't, for some reason, there are only 2 types of entities that exist, consisting of the life form and the still life. Which, speaking of the life form, I'm here to debunk a claim that some people tend to mix up. So we all know Captain Clark, right? The main entity that we see traversing around the Backrooms throughout the whole film, causing problems for that acing guy in the beginning, and Clark, Mary, and even the still lives. I'm sorry to inform some of the people who believe he's a life form, but he's not. Captain Clark is not a life form. He is, instead, a still life. Now you may be wondering, what's the difference between a life form and a still life? Well, from what we've learned from the series, life forms seem to be created from the dead bodies of the victims the Backrooms claims. It seems that whenever a person dies inside the Backrooms, their body seems to mutate into some sort of bacteria, fungus thing. We see strong evidence of this stuff occurring within autopsy report and found footage too. The victim that was driving the car and crashed had seemingly died inside that empty room, which soon brought upon the creation of the life form that chases the main protagonist. And it's also interesting that the life form seems to hold mimic-like abilities, being able to mimic sounds of actual people, as seen in Pitfalls, when Marvin gets lured in by the life form, who pretends to be a person that's trapped down there. And to an extent, the sounds and screams that emit from the life forms, such as in Found Footage 1, 2, and Pitfalls, also resembling human screams, which I'm not very certain they are human screams, as I believe, if I'm not wrong, Kane has stated that the sounds emitted from the life forms aren't necessarily human screams, as he said he's used different types of animal sounds to create their screeches, but it's still an interesting thought. Now, with the still lifes, they are created from memories. So life forms are created from dead victims, while still lives are created from the Backrooms itself. Now with still lives, they seem to vary with how they are created or how they act, because we have to consider the differences between the still lives we've seen so far, such as the still life of Clark, Barbara, the 2 men in the house during the scene between Clark and Mary, and the still life from Found Footage 3 that chases Ravi. Now, with the accuracy of these still lives is not very clear as to why it varies so much, but for all we know, we just have Clark's statement to go off of when it comes to these things, where the more times I remember something, the less it does, which could possibly explain why a lot of the still lives look off. But it might be possible as well that still lives are also a personification of that person's emotions during a certain time in their life. Like, the Backrooms will take a person during a moment in their life and turn it into a still life of that person during that moment. Hence why the still life of Barbara runs away whenever Captain Clark is approaching, or even the fact that Captain Clark is very aggressive. Now, on the topic of the still lifes, we have a very interesting example to analyze within this movie, and that is Captain Clark. An interesting thing about Captain Clark is that he seems to be the most accurate copy out of all the other still lives we've seen, which could likely be because the Backrooms has had more time to remember Clark's features, or if Captain Clark stays active or alive for long enough, he could lose his strong resemblance of Clark, as what we've learned with how the Backrooms seems to remember things less the more times it does. So it's possible that Captain Clark may be the most accurate still life because of how recent he was created, but may soon lose his strong resemblance if the Backrooms continues to remember how Clark looked. And also the fact that the Backrooms had a null zone that connected right into Clark's furniture store, so it was able to analyze Clark very well. Now, one question you may have is, how come Captain Clark kills Clark? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Because Clark tells Captain Clark that he doesn't need to change, and that Mary says that it's just the way they are, to then tell Captain Clark that it's just the way they're wired, if Captain Clark is Clark's anger and aggressive emotions personified, telling Captain Clark not to change that behavior is only going to make him continue to act like that. Hence why he decides to murder Clark. Because if he doesn't need to change, then he doesn't need to stop killing. So that's why he ends up killing Clark and starts hunting Mary. Now, one thing I have been wondering is, with the still lives we've seen in the movie, what does that mean for the still life that we see in Found Footage 3? It only makes me wonder, who exactly could this still life be a memory of? What exactly is it? Is it someone's random memory that's running rampant throughout the Backrooms and just so happens to encounter Ravi? Or is it something that's connected to Ravi? I saw an interesting theory that said that the Found Footage 3 still life could likely be an incarnate of the intruder that Ravi seems to suspect broke out of his house in the beginning of Found Footage 3, with the shape of the broken glass in the door being in a strange shape instead of a normal human one, and would also explain the strange proportions and awkward build the still life has. But with all that said and done, that's the entities in the Backrooms explained in the best way I can give it to you. I hope I don't cause any more confusion, and I hope that my explanation of how Kane Pixel's Backrooms handles their entities makes sense to you and you're able to have a better understanding and not run off of your own assumptions that likely are wrong. But with all that being said, that's all I really have to say. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, fuck off.